Joining me now is Dr. Katy Brown, postdoctoral fellow at Maynooth University. Thanks very much for joining us on the programme today. So the accusation then that these riots appear to be stirred up principally by far-right posts on social media.
Yeah, I mean, clearly social media has acted as a catalyst in this scenario in sparking these situations and events. And social media is an important organising space for the far right. It's a further outlet for far right discourse and spreading mis and disinformation. But what I'd also emphasise in this is that sometimes we can focus a little too much on the role of social media, because it can detract attention from the way that these issues have longer term origins within UK politics and more broadly. So this kind of violence doesn't just emerge from one incident. It requires a longer history of the dehumanisation of Muslims, asylum seekers, and a normalisation of racism and anti-immigration politics within the UK. And that doesn't just come from social media. We've seen that from political parties, the Tory party, the previous government, and the Labour Party as well to some extent. So I think, yes, we need to think about the role of social media in this, but we need to look at this more broadly and the political climate that has brought this about.
And how long would you say you have to sort of go back, if you like, to see those origins starting to infiltrate, if that's the right word, society?
I mean, you can definitely talk about an escalation, particularly in the post-Brexit years, because Brexit was there was a huge focus on anti-immigration politics within Brexit. But this kind of rhetoric was being spoken about many years ago as well. Margaret Thatcher spoke about people swamping the UK. So there's been within recent years a kind of escalation, but this is something that also has a long history in UK politics.
There's been particular criticism, hasn't there, of the leader of Reform UK, he's now an MP, of course, Nigel Farage, accused of excusing far-right disorder.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's another example of why focusing so much on social media does detract, because Nigel Farage has been a key figure in this. When this very tragic incident happened, he posted saying that we can question whether we've been told the whole truth. So he was directly feeding into this disinformation campaign, and has since spoken about these riots as if they come from genuine concerns from people. So he is doing a lot to legitimize these riots.
How can you counter it, though? Because it's very difficult, isn't it, to tell broadcasters, for example, or newspaper editors not to represent the views of people who are either standing in elections or, in the case of Nigel Farage, have been elected.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's obviously very complex on how to respond, but I think we really need to focus on progressive alternatives and not feed into far-right discourses. So political parties have been campaigning on an anti-immigration basis in the UK election, for example. Rishi Sunak stood in front of a podium which had "Stop the Boats" written in front of it, and we've seen in these riots people chanting "Stop the Boats" and holding signs with that. So you don't beat the far right by becoming them. We need progressive alternatives that put forward policies that impact on what people really care about, what impacts their day-to-day lives, the cost of living crisis, health, education. So we need to not try to defeat the far right on its own ground.
Because, of course, the main criticism of particularly of these demonstrators, if that's the word, rioters, other people would say, is that, of course, the person accused of these crimes was actually born in the UK.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just obviously it's just terrible that this kind of tragic incident has been manipulated in this way. But as I was saying, I think this does speak to the wider normalization of racism that we've seen in the UK, that has meant that this kind of climate has been created. So the Labour MP for Tamworth only 5 days ago spoke about people wanting, in her constituency, wanting their hotel back that was being used to house asylum seekers. And that hotel just yesterday was attacked by these protesters. So we can see how political discourse can feed into the creation of a climate that allows this kind of violence to be emboldened and escalate.
Thanks very much for joining us on the programme today, Dr. Katy Brown, postdoctoral fellow at Maynooth University. Thanks very much.